Meeting for the Township of Muskoka Lakes. I'll call this meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. I can verbally confirm that all members of council are present and therefore we obviously have quorum. I can also confirm that we are joined today by the CAO, the clerk, and other members of our senior management team. And I would, before we get going, I would like to read the land acknowledgement statement. We want to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations, and their stewardship throughout the ages is recognized. Okay, just a reminder that today's meeting is being live streamed and it's being recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and its YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, your voice, and your comments being recorded and posted online. We did circulate the agenda, I think, last Friday and sought public input at TML public comment at muskokalakes.ca. And we did receive some, we did receive some letters. They're on the agenda. As you can probably see under 7A, we will have, we have received public comment from Deborah Martin Downs, who is the chair of the Environment Committee at the Muskoka Lakes Association. We received public comment in the form of letters received expressing support for JW Marriott event series, and that's agenda item 11E. And also under 7C, public comments for a maximum of 5 minutes were sought, and we did receive a request for public comments from the presentation from Mr. Helfland. Separately, well, we'll start with that. We have Mr. Helfland here. Or no? Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Then we have the other changes. We've added public comments from Mr. Longo and Ms. Epplett. There was a supplementary agenda issued. It was issued under section 7.2.1 of Council Procedure Bylaw 2.0 or 2023-089. And it covers off items such as item 4B, Development Charges Bylaw, which will be a public hearing. Item 4B, Development Bylaws letter received in support or in dealing with that public hearing matter. We replaced item 12, sub B, sub 5, a bylaw 2024-054, which is a bylaw to levy and collect taxes for municipal purposes for the year 2024 and establish due dates. We'll cover that off when we get to that issue. And finally, there was another issue added, item 12B6, a bylaw 2024-053, a bylaw relating to lot 35 plan M119 in the township of Medora. And again, we will cover that off when we come to that one as well. All right, before we go any further, I'm going to ask if anyone has any interests, pecuniary interests that they wish to disclose. Seeing none, I have one, and it is a request that I made to pull item 8 sub A sub 2 from the consent agenda for last month's meeting. It's item 9D relating to the property at 7 Bailey Street in Port Carling. And the reason is that I own, or I have an interest in an adjoining piece of property. So I will be recusing from that issue when it comes up. Okay, moving on. We do have one invited presentation, and it's a presentation relating to the consulting work that's being done on our development charges background study. Stefan K., if you were here we are. If you would please walk us through the presentation. The microphone is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And members of council. I was with you on April the 10th to discuss development charges, so that this is somewhat a follow-up meeting but a few things have happened since then. And this meeting specifically is a public meeting, which is required under Section 12 of the Development Charges Act prior to you passing a new development charges bylaw. We can go to the next slide, I think. So the purpose of this meeting really is to allow members of the public to make representations on the 2024 development charges background study and draft version of a bylaw, both of which have been released since I was here on April the 10th. So the background study was released on the township's website on April the 12th, and the bylaw was made publicly available on May the 1st. Next slide, please. So some of the ground we'll be covering today will be ground we covered on April the 10th, although I won't be getting into the same kind of detail about the legislative changes that have been made over the last few years. I will be focusing more on the background study results and the key inputs that go into the calculation of the rates that are included in the background study. Certainly show you the rates. They're slightly different from what you saw on April the 10th, but not by much. They represent, of course, a significant increase from the rates that are currently in force in Muskoka Lakes. I'll show you how those rates compare to some other similar surrounding jurisdictions and talk a little bit about next steps. Next slide, please. So again, for some of these introductory slides will be familiar to council, but for members of the public who are here, development charges are fees that are imposed on development to pay for growth-related capital expenditures. So capital costs only, not operating costs, and only to the extent that they are needed to expand facilities, install new infrastructure to meet the needs of new development. The principle behind them is that growth should pay for itself, so that the burden of expanding infrastructure is not borne by the existing residents of the township. Next slide, please. I spent a lot of time last month, I think, speaking about the significant changes that have been made in recent years to the development charge legislation. This is part of this Conservative government's priority to address housing affordability in Ontario and stimulate the construction of new homes. Certainly in its last term, it struck a housing supply action plan, a housing affordability task force. It ran on a platform to build 1.5 million new homes by 2031 in the province. And it passed a number of bills that amended the Development Charges Act. And collectively, the purpose of these amendments was, among other things, to reduce municipal fees and charges, including development charges, on very specific types of development, but also more generally to reduce housing construction costs. The most significant of these was Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, which came into force at the end of 2022. And I went through some of the sort of provisions of Bill 23 on April the 10th, but just very briefly, this bill introduced mandatory exemptions from the payment of development charges for very specific types of development, existing rental buildings, the duplexing, triplexing, or adding ancillary units to existing residential properties, for nonprofit housing. Discounts on development charges were imposed for purpose-built rental buildings. So those would be rentals with 4 or more units in them. And then on top of those targeted exemptions and discounts, a general phase-in of all development charges when they're passed by a council over a 5-year period. Next slide, please. Some of you may remember that the last time I was here, we were doing it in real time, because literally, I think the moment I spoke, the government came out with Bill 185, which is proposing some changes that would reverse the Bill 23 exemption and phase-in and discount framework. This is not yet in force. However, we expect it to be passed imminently. We don't quite know whether it's going to be passed before this council gets an opportunity to consider and pass a bylaw, or afterwards. And so there are some implications to that, which I'll deal with when we get to the end. There's three things I wanted to highlight about Bill 185 for you. The first is that Bill 185 is proposing to remove the mandatory 5-year phase-in, which means that in considering what rates to impose, you can impose the full 100% rate in year one, should you wish to. The second thing is that growth-related studies, essentially planning studies and sort of feasibility studies for new infrastructure, have been reintroduced or are being proposed to be reintroduced as a development charge eligible cost. We sort of anticipated this might happen. So the background study that was released included calculations that account for the funding for those studies. So those are already in the rates that I'm going to show you today. And so no change is required to accommodate that if it gets passed. The third thing I wanted to highlight was that there are exemptions in the Development Charges Act that are not in force that apply to affordable housing and attainable housing as defined by the province. And Bill 185 would bring into force the affordable housing provisions exemptions on June 1st, in a few weeks. The definition of what is to be affordable will be determined through by the province through regularly issued bulletins that it's going to be released. And the first bulletin was released a couple of weeks ago. And so, there is a basis now for sort of teasing out exactly what might qualify in Muskoka Lakes. I think it's fair to say that there will be very few owner-occupied units that would qualify for the affordable housing exemption. There may be a few more rental units that qualify, but for the most part, the thresholds are very, very low. And it's difficult to see, particularly in this township, that there would be many units that would qualify. Next slide, please. I just want to focus a little bit on the development charge study results then. So the study was conducted under the very strict provisions of the Act for calculating the charge. It includes a development forecast for the township over the next 10 years. It includes some fairly detailed analysis about service levels that have been provided in the township over the last 15 years. Those set a limit on how much you can fund from development charges moving forward. It includes a growth-related capital program for each of the services for which a charge is determined, and the funding sources and funding needs of the projects in that program have all been identified as well. So to the extent that you're receiving grants to pay for those projects, they're identified in the study. Any benefits accruing to existing residents from those projects are identified in the study, as are your existing development charge reserve funds, and any benefits from the new infrastructure that might accrue to development beyond our 10-year planning horizon, they're also identified as well. Ultimately, the pool of costs that remain after all those deductions are made are eligible for DC funding, and the rates have been calculated on the basis of you recovering those costs. And the rates would apply on residential development as a charge per unit, with a higher charge for the larger unit types, and then as a charge on new floor area of non-residential buildings. Next slide, please. This just summarizes the development forecast that's the basis of the calculations. This is the same table that I showed you on April the 10th. The forecast is rooted in work being done at the district for all the lower tier municipalities in Muskoka. It anticipates growth of around 43 new units a year over the next 10 years. A little bit faster growth in the front end of the period, slowing down as we move through the period, and mostly permanently occupied units. So fewer seasonal units moving forward than perhaps we've seen in the past. And on the non-residential side, about 50 new jobs per year over the next 10 years. A little bit higher than we were working with when this study was last done in 2019. Details about the forecast can be found in Appendix A of the background study. Next slide, please. This just gives you a summary of the breakdown of costs for each of the services for which we've calculated a charge. So this is the total growth-related capital program over the next 10 years. The services are on the left there. And you can see I'm going to work along the bottom row here. This is the same chart that you saw on April the 10th. So it's a $32 million program over the next 10 years. No grants or subsidies have been identified. A significant component of the program will benefit existing residents, either because it involves the replacement of existing facilities, or it represents a sort of an improvement that will benefit new development and existing residents in equal measure. And you can see particularly in the fire service and the road service, there are significant benefits to be had for the existing community. The township has just over $1.2 million of development charge reserve funds on hand that are available to fund those costs. And then if we skip to the final column on the right, you can see that in the case of the Parks and Recreation, where one of the key project is a provision for a new facility. A significant amount of the cost of that facility is deemed to benefit development well beyond the 10 years. Ultimately, then, it's the column in the middle there, the 2024 to 33 column. Those are the costs that are brought forward to the development charge calculation, the $8 million. Next slide, please. And these are the rates that would be required to fully fund the $8 million. So on the left there, you can see it's just over $17,000 for a single or a semi-detached unit. And then, as I say, for the smaller unit types, we have lower rates. And on the pie chart on the right shows you how the sort of the typical development charge dollar would be allocated to each of the services. The vast majority of the charge would be for the Parks and Rec service, 56% of the total charge. But certainly the roads, the fire are not inconsequential components as well. Next slide, please. This table compares the current charges that are in place with the charges that have been calculated in the background study. This table has been modified a little bit since we showed it on April the 10th. So first of all, I should mention that the charge that you saw on April the 10th was reduced ever so slightly in the final background study. So it was about $30 higher. Not huge, but wanted to note that. And the second thing is that we've put, for comparative purposes, in the first column, you'll see that that's the charge that would be in place had you been indexing your charge over the last 5 years. So that's the sort of $6,500 there. The charge that's currently in place, which is an unindexed charge, is $4,500 for a single detached unit. So the calculated charge, just over $17,000, is a $12,500 increase from the rate that's currently in force. So those are obviously significant rate increases. Inflation certainly plays a role in what's going on here, but also the fact that there are significant changes to the capital program that have taken place over the last 5 years, particularly in the Parks and Rec side of things, where we didn't really have any provision at all for facility expansion. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the phase-in is currently in force, but will be removed if and when Bill 185 is passed. So for sort of transparency's sake, this is, if you were to impose the full charge, then in year one, it would be only for a single detached unit, it would only be $13,651. You wouldn't get to the $17,000 level until year 5 of the bylaw. Next slide, please. This table, this chart, we also showed on April the 10th, but we've made a few modifications to it. In a couple of respects, in response to comments we received from another council, another lower tier council in the district. What this is now showing you is the total municipal charge that's imposed in various municipalities in the district, in the northern part of Simcoe County and further north in the district of Parry Sound. And we've also layered in area-specific charges that apply for certain areas, for example, in Oro-Medonte and Ramera, so that the green portion of the bar now shows you where sort of very specific water, stormwater, and sewer charges apply. The gold portion of the bar is what the lower tier would charge, and the red component is the upper tier charge, the district charge in this case. And you can see currently that of the range of municipalities, Muskoka Lakes' current charge is near the bottom. And in fact, the only municipalities that have lower charges are the Lake of Bays, which does not impose a development charge, uniquely does not impose a development charge in the district of Muskoka, and municipalities in the district of Parry Sound further north, where only Parry Sound itself imposes a charge, and the district does not. So the newly calculated charge in Muskoka Lakes would put you towards the upper end of the range of charges, still lower than what the calculated charge is in Bracebridge, a little bit higher than what we've just calculated for the township of Georgian Bay. But I should note that the Huntsville charge here and the Gravenhurst charge are going to be updated later this year. So if the experience in Bracebridge is anything to go by, we could see potentially significant increases in both of those municipalities. Next slide, please. So on the non-residential side, it's just over $52 a square meter that's been calculated, and it's only related to the fire, the roads, and the development-related studies components. So we've not calculated a charge here for parks and recreation and libraries, because the need for those services is really driven by the residential sector. Next slide, please. This is the slide comparing the current charges to the calculated charge. So again, the current charge is just under $20 a square meter. It would be just under $30 a square meter had you indexed your charge over the last 5 years to inflation. So the calculated charge of $52 a square meter is a $32 per square meter increase. Next slide, please. And this is the comparison of the non-residential charge to those that are imposed in other municipalities. And you can see, like the residential, the further south we move, the higher the charges get. Certainly when you're looking at the faster growing places in Simcoe County, in the northern part of Simcoe County, then the charges are significantly higher. And indeed, if we went further south into Innisfil and New Tecumseh, they would be sort of off the charts of this slide. In the context of Muskoka, itself, you're sort of towards the lower end, and the new charge would put you up to the other upper end of the scale. No matter where you were, no matter what DC you impose, even if you left the current charge in place, you would still be higher than the rates that are imposed up in Parry Sound. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, a draft bylaw has also been released on the website in advance of this meeting. The bylaw has been updated to reflect the statutory changes that have taken place over the last 5 years. So we've made sure that all the right compliance matters have been addressed and definitions have been updated. There are some exemptions that the township provides over and above the statutory exemptions in Bill 23. So you have a policy, for example, of allowing someone who demolishes a home and rebuilds it within 3 years to get a credit for any development charge. They don't pay a development charge provided they rebuild in 3 years. You do, and we also have included an automatic annual indexing provision for you to consider, because we do think it's important that moving forward, regardless of what charge you impose, that charge should keep pace with inflation, because certainly that's part of what's been driving the costs of municipal infrastructure over the last 5 years, and you haven't kept pace with inflation in that respect. Next slide, please. So just in terms of where we are, as I say, the background study was released on April the 12th, and we are at the public meeting stage here on May the 15th. The public meeting has been advertised as required 20 days in advance of this meeting, and we're hoping to bring a bylaw for your consideration to you on June the 12th. Just on the matter of the passage of Bill 185, if Bill 185 is not passed before June the 12th, then we will have to pull the studies out of the rates. There is a transition provision built into the bill that allows you to introduce the studies charge within 6 months with no additional public meeting or amendment to the study. So I think we're in a good position to be able to do that, provided that the bill is passed in the next 6 months, and we have every expectation that that's going to happen. So I think we're well positioned to deal with however that bill plays itself out. That's my presentation, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to answer any questions you or the public may have.
Thank you very much for a great presentation. Do we have any questions? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. So do we have a sense of the public coming forward to this meeting and public commentary? Thank you.
We actually do. We have one, I believe, is on the agenda, a document that was left behind, a letter that was received by the clerk, and I understand there may be one online as well. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Anybody with other questions for, sir, Mr. Bosenberg, or Councillor Bosenberg?
Thank you, and through you. Of the increase from 6477 to 17,000, so that 12,000 increase, can you separate how much do you think is due to inflationary pressures, and how much was due to items being added to the capital plan?
Mr. Mayor, so I can't obviously give you a precise number, but the majority of it would be changes to the capital program.
Any other questions? I have one quick one. You mentioned the 6-month period that we can go back and amend without another public hearing. When does the clock start running? Did it start in April, or does it start when it's actually proclaimed in force?
It will start when it's proclaimed in
Okay,
force.
thank you. Oh, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Through you, I think actually to you. I'm not sure that I missed something, but that this council passed a recreation plan. I know we passed a study, I don't know that we have moved forward to saying that we're going to establish this, and therefore my concern is that how long are we going to collect charges from people and then not in fact build anything? It's sort of a bigger.
Very good question. And I'm going to be looking to Director Pink, perhaps? No? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sir, Stefan.
Do you want me
Yes.
to? So, well, Mr. Mayor, obviously I can't address the question of when you might build a facility, but I do think it's important, and we discussed this with staff, is that having done a Parks and Recreation master plan that identifies a need in the next 10 years, certainly we felt it was important that that need be identified in the background study, which is looking at a 10-year forecast period. So the specific year that's identified is 2030, which is later in the period, because I think the recognition is that a fair amount of planning and thought will be needed to exactly scope out what might be required. And I should also point out that a significant component of the cost of this facility has been left out of the charge as a post-period benefit. So we have, I'm looking at the number here, it's a $16.5 million program for Parks and Recreation, and $12.5 million has been treated as benefiting development beyond 2033.
Mr. Donaldson, sir.
Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to add some context as well. So under the Development Charges Act, it's really about council's intention. So while we have placed certain items in the development charge study that talk about specifics, they may or may not materialize in the form in which they're presented, but it's really about an overarching intent. And I think as Stefan had indicated, I think that through the arena feasibility study and through the Parks and Rec master plan, council has indicated, certainly staff's interpretation is that there is an intent, that there is something that needs to be done in the coming years. And so this gives us an opportunity to raise some capital for those costs related to the expansion of service of the existing service level that we have currently in the community.
Thank you. CEO Hammond, you had something?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to add to Mr. Donaldson's comments, other communities in the past locally have missed out on the opportunity to charge development charges proactively, such as what we're proposing today. So the facilities that they built were actually on the basis of debt and the taxpayer. And so this approach allows you to get ahead of it. In fact, one of the municipality I'm speaking about, they're actually going to try and collect the fee retroactively. So proactive approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Nishikawa, did that answer your question?
It just leads me to another question, which has always been in the back of my mind. So it's interesting that, again, we develop these outlines. I haven't seen where we have the opportunity to say, let's choose A, B, and C. They were really brought forward by the consultants' ideas, but I just don't know when our council is actually going to sit down and say, let's pick one of these items or two of the, whatever that is. Please don't tell me that I have to wait for another strategic planning meeting or all those kind of things, because I just think we're a little bit further into the term by now, but that's all I'm suggesting, is that while we have these great plans, I don't think that we have really gotten into what we're choosing to do.
Thank you. And I understand that. I believe that's largely going to be a product of the service level review that we're just embarking upon, which will look at all of the investments we think are necessary to support a level of service through all these different sectors. Any other questions? Nope, I see none. Okay, we have, as I said earlier, we have opportunity for public comment. I know at least one person who's online. I don't have a name. First of all, anyone in the room wish to make a comment on the development charges issue? No? Oh, we have Mr. Bornstein joining us on Zoom. He's coming in momentarily. Mr. Bornstein, are you joining us? Mr. Bornstein, can you hear me? I think we're stuck in neutral there. Mr. Bornstein, we're going to have to move on unless you either speak up or identify yourself on the camera. Nothing. Okay, not there. I don't hear him, see him. So we'll move forward. The only other comment, as I said, was left in the form of a letter with the clerk. And it's available to pull down online from the agenda and have a read through. Actually, it's an interesting letter, worth the time to look at it. All right, the next up, we're going to have, I think it's Director Donaldson's turn. Welcome, sir.
So thank you, Your Worship. So we've completed our requirements under the Development Charges Act. We've posted the background study. We have posted the draft bylaw. We've had our opportunity to solicit comment from the public. We sent out a public notice by mail to all ratepayers in advance notification of this meeting. And given council's hearing of the report and the results, I just am looking for confirmed direction that it is council's desire that I would bring back a final bylaw for development charges for the next 10 years to the next council meeting for your consideration.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Donaldson or comment back? All right, I believe I have a resolution, but I don't have a clerk. Just take 1 second. This one.
I will read the resolution, moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Dallas. Be resolved that whereas the 2024 development charges background study is made available to the public at least 60 days prior to the passing of the development charge bylaw. And whereas the draft development charge bylaw is made available to the public at least 2 weeks prior to the passing of the development charge bylaw. And whereas a public meeting to receive comments on the draft 2024 development charges background study and the proposed development charges bylaw is held on May 15, 2024. And whereas council has received public input on the draft development charges background study and draft bylaw and has provided direction to staff on any amendments necessary for inclusion in the draft bylaw. Now therefore be it resolved that the 2024 development charges background study be received and that staff be directed to present the development charges bylaw as amended consideration at the next regularly scheduled meeting of council.
It's on now. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sorry. I think that the clerk was trying to get a hold of Mr. Bornstein, but we'll move forward with this. Councillor Kent, I didn't have my microphone on.
Mayor Peter, I can hear you barely. It was okay. I got the gist of it.
Okay. Okay, I've read the resolution. We had no comments, no questions, so I will call all in favor. Please raise. And that carries. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Mr. Bornstein.
Okay, is it my turn?
A little out of time, unfortunately. We went ahead, since we couldn't get a hold of you, and addressed the bylaw.
Okay, I guess I'll just send in some comments afterwards.
That's good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's done and closed. We'll move on to public comments. We've received several. First one was, as I mentioned earlier, 7A, Deborah Martin Downs, who is the chair of the Environment Committee of the Muskoka Lakes Association, made a submission in writing on item 8A4 from the April 11 Planning Committee meeting. It's a letter, also a good read. If you haven't already read it, it's on the record. There were letters received under moving on to 7B, letters received expressing support for the JW Marriott event series, agenda item 11E, and which is a report from the Economic Development Officer, CED 2024-012. Special event permit bylaw letters is what it's denoted. Those letters as well can be pulled down from the agenda and reviewed. The next up, I've got a presentation from Matthew Helfand, a municipal and land use planning lawyer at Airden Burles. And it also is relating to item 11E, a report from the Economic Development Officer, report CED 2024-012, special event permit bylaw 2024-046.
So we're freestyling this bitch or what?
Mr. Helfand.
We're gonna do like a font on top.
Good morning.
Good trees.
I think
Good afternoon.
misspoke is more important than Park Island.
You think so?
Yes.
Just one moment, Mr. Helfand. We got something else going on there.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yeah, the mysterious iPhone was
you're back.
making
Well, you're
noise.
on.
Yes,
Well,
wonderful.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right, we'll wait while we're waiting for Mr. Helfand to rejoin. Oh, he's back.
Hi there. Sorry,
Hi.
I was
Sorry.
just I was just booted out, but I'm back now.
Well, we're glad. Thank you for
okay.
joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity. I do appreciate it. Thank you for giving me 5 minutes to speak on this particular item. As indicated, I am a lawyer at the law firm of Airden Burles, and I represent company 2253100 Ontario Inc. That is our client, but they are better known as the JW Marriott. And we are speaking today on behalf of the JW Marriott in respect of item 11C, which is 11E, which is the special event permit bylaw. And we are here to express our clients' very serious concerns with this bylaw. And we appreciate the time to express those concerns and for your listening and consideration. Now, as council is well aware, our client is proposing to host a Canada Day concert. That's going to be coming up hopefully in July, on June, July on Canada Day. And I know the council is aware of this, and I know there has been letters submitted and complaints have been raised about this. But before I go into our comments on the bylaw itself, I think it's very important to clear up some potential misconceptions about what our client is proposing to do. Our client is not proposing to host another Woodstock 99. That is not what is going to happen. This is an event focused around Canada Day that is effectively easy listening Canadian music. That's the type of event that's being hosted here. This is not a 10,000 person event. This is an event with an estimated attendance somewhere in the range of 2,000 or 3,000, which is important to note is well within the capacity of what this space can already hold and already has the opportunity to host in terms of its indoor and outdoor grounds. So this is not anything that is beyond what is intended for this property. It can be well accommodated. Safety concerns are intended to be addressed by our client, who is a professional at this sort of event. And so this is not the type of thing that is going to be causing any significant harm or disruption. That is what this event is. So this bylaw, as a result, we think is a solution in search of a problem. It is not needed to regulate the type of thing that my client is proposing. It's also important to note, and Your Worship, you raised many of these letters that were submitted. There's not universal opposition to what my client is proposing to do, and there is not universal support for this bylaw. Many people submitted letters in support of what our client is proposing to do, including the Chamber of Commerce, who has written a letter in support of our client's event and in opposition to the type of regulation that's being proposed through this bylaw. So with respect to this bylaw itself, we have a number of concerns. The first of which is a procedural fairness matter. Our client has been working with municipal staff since last November, transparently and cooperatively, to set the stage for this event that is coming forward on Canada Day, no pun intended. And this bylaw came forward without any notice to our client, without any consultation. It was just part of the committee agenda. And given what it is intending to do to our client, we think that there was serious issues about notice and consultation. And the result of the lack of consultation is apparent in the bylaw. This bylaw does more than just regulate this specific concert. This bylaw, which of course it's an amendment to take the rules that relate to public events on public space and apply them to private property, creates some serious unintended consequences. There's a very broad definition of special event contained in the bylaw, which would regulate anything that our client would effectively be doing in its ordinary business operations. So for instance, there's a reference to any sort of beach event would be considered a special event. This sort of vagueness in the bylaw creates some serious business risk for our client. So that is a significant problem, and that's just one of many. And we think that's the result of a lack of consultation, that if industry and the community was more broadly consulted, a better and more tailored bylaw, if that was even necessary, which we don't think it is to deal with our concert. But if this is the will of council, it has to be the result of consultation. We also think that the cap of 500 individuals for an event is far too low. Because again, the capacity of the space, the JW Marriott is already significantly higher than that and can operate without disruption. So what we're asking council to do, and I know I'm nearing the end of my time, is to defer this bylaw to allow for further consultation. We don't think that it's needed to regulate the specific concert. We don't think that this is an appropriate mechanism to do that. But if council is adamant on passing that, and we recognize council has the discretion to do that, we ask that you please exempt this year's event. Our client has already started selling tickets, has already booked music artists.
Mr. Helfand, you're at 5 minutes. Just wrap it up, please.
Thank you very much. So there's significant business interest and it's huge financial harm if this is allowed to go ahead. So please, we're asking for a deferral or an exemption or an amendment to allow this event to go ahead. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question? Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you, through you, and I'm actually going to ask you to direct it where you want. I'm very challenged with this particular speaker on discussing this particular site because I don't have enough information of what they were planning and even where the outdoor implications. I sometimes if I saw a map, for instance, I would see, oh yes, this neighborhood is going to be disrupted quite a bit about the noise. I don't have any idea of what that looks like. I mean, I get there's rumors and different things like that, but I will say some of my question will also relate on how I look at other properties in our township, and in fact, even another event center that we just approved a year or so ago. And again, the outdoor ability, because I don't know that we even had that conversation with that particular application. So I'm not really even clear where we're putting 2,000 people. And if I could extend it a little bit further towards public works and necessarily the district. So in all of our conversations since the early 2000s about Minette, the whole concern about the amount of traffic traveling up peninsula and how that would be managed. I don't know that I have any comfort level there yet, and I just didn't know if you might add to that.
Well, I'm going to very quickly say that the bylaw that we're talking about has nothing to do with any specific property, any specific event, any specific environment. It has everything to do with the safety and security that we think is necessary in order to create something we've defined as a special event. And as far, I'm going to invite Director Pink to step in and speak to some of these issues as well if he wishes, but I don't want to be lured into the discussion about this site. It's got nothing to do with this site. It's for general application. Director Pink.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just echo those comments. The bylaw or the amendments to the bylaw before you are not intended for a specific event or a specific property, nor is the goal to prohibit events on a specific property or in properties in general. It's to ensure that should an event occur on private property that exceeds 500 people, that it's appropriately managed, it occurs safely, and it's enjoyable for the community, which I think echoes the exact terms that was submitted by Mr. Helfand in their submission. I think we have a mutual goal. And that is the intent of the bylaw. The other thing I would note as well is this bylaw has been in place for a number of years and has applied to a number of events, and we work with those event proponents. And I think it has been fairly successful. Those events are just occurring solely on public lands. This is just an evolution or an advancement to now include it on private lands as well.
Thank you for that. I see Councillor Kent, your hand is up.
Thank you. I have a question for the presenter, through you. Could you just, since the details have been a little sketchy for lots of the community members, could you just tell us where you expect to put these 2,000 to 3,000 people? How many inside, how many outside? What are your plans?
Thank you, Councillor Kent, and I appreciate the question. Now, I'm mindful that we're not here seeking explicit permission for this event through here, but we're speaking to the bylaw. So, I think at this point, it is intended to be an outdoor event. That's where, but the numbers aren't finalized, and the numbers typically won't be finalized until the tickets are sold. What I would say is that the grounds themselves, including the banquet hall, currently have a capacity of 2,400 people. That's what our building code requirements and the liquor license requirements allow as a cap. And that's detailed in a submission that was made by our client's land use planner. And so that is already the threshold that we have. Now, this bylaw is dealing with only the outdoor events. And so, if it rains, the event would be taking place inside. So, I don't have all the details of exactly where the stage is, where the individuals are going to be. We can provide you that information, absolutely. And our client has been working transparently with staff on that, on what we intend to do. But really what we're asking for here is some consideration for, yes, this is a private event on private property, and this is a bylaw of general application, but the impact of this bylaw of general application disproportionately affects this particular landowner. And that's the concern. So while it could be general application, the actual impact itself is of specific application. And we think that some further consultation would result in a better bylaw rather than just taking the public events bylaw, putting it on private property.
Okay, before we go any further, I'm going to just repeat again for the benefit of everybody. The document that we are going to be talking about in a few minutes when we get to it on the agenda is completely neutral as to location, event, type of event, and so forth. It's not, we're not deciding the fate of a particular location or particular concert. It's for general application. So questions like that are ones better left to the group of people that were working with the promoter to develop a plan of safety and security. Anyone else with Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. I'm liking this bylaw more and more, and I also wonder if through to you, our other situation on a provincial lands, where we, I'm wondering if we could, if this bylaw is passed, if we could apply it to, for instance, a need for a road closure to only allow residents to come to an area. I'm specifically talking about the Torrance Barrens and when, you know, thousands come upon in surprise. And I actually feel that we could be planning better because we know these events do come up. And could you see us directing things in that manner, like whether it's through the district or the police or whoever that works out?
Thank you. I'm going to go to Director Pink on that one.
Thank you, through your worship. I believe the current bylaw would address that if there were to be a known event that was occurring even on Crown land property, but required closure of a municipal street. I think it would necessitate a special event permit, and it would go through that process.
Thank
you. Anyone else with a comment? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Halfan. We appreciate your input very much. We're going to move on to item 7D, which is a presentation from Leo Longo. I'm sorry. Oh, is there a presentation? Mr. Longo, I think, is involved. Sir, you're going to speak on behalf of, in place of? Okay. Oh, good. Thank you. So you are on behalf of?
Michael DeSanzo, the JW Marriott. I was put on the
Just one moment for my better.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Michael DeSanzo, representing the ownership of the 225-3100, the JW Marriott, with respect to the new bylaw for consideration under 11E. Normally, Leo Longo and Stefan, our Plantscapes representatives, would be here. Thank you so much, Matthew, for making yourself available in short notice. But they're at the Ontario Land Tribunal today and tomorrow with respect, I guess, the township on some of the items that they're changing with us that we have to fight them. Anyways, it just seems like a fight all the time with this regarding the JW Marriott. Quite getting tired of it. We approached the township in November 2023, which we were not required to do. And we did so. We've had about 5 to 6 meetings on it. We've been meeting every month since November. You're on the first Zoom call, Mayor. You have been absent since those meetings, but we have been meeting in this room every month since then. And in every meeting, we have been very transparent in what we were doing. We have developed a team to assist us. Every meeting, we were met with more requirements. At the next meeting, we fulfilled those requirements to be met with larger requirements. At the next meeting, we satisfy those to make a longer pile and a larger pile. So I'm getting quite frustrated and quite disappointed with that. Especially when we were the ones to instigate the meeting, and we've been very transparent. Then to find out that you go to the Finance General Committee meeting April 10th, I believe. We were not even notified of that after the meeting in November and going through that. And it's very concerning, and it's very apparent that the walls are being built, not bridges, which is very, very concerning as an owner, and getting quite tired of being targeted. You say it's not targeted the JW, is clearly targeted the JW. We know that. We know that it's from the social, from the Muskoka Lakes Association. We know that's from the social media posts, and we clearly state that in our letter with our lawyer. Townships have conceded that the recent changes to the special events bylaw were because of the negative social media campaign immediately drafted their special events planning guidelines. These are only emailed to our client March 21st. The meeting was April 10th. So we're getting quite tired with the way we're being treated. Listen, there's a lot of other communities that are being, welcoming. We do note that the September Labor Day concert that we were referring to that we were going to defer has been moved to Niagara Falls. And I do want everybody to know, and anybody listening and any media wants to pick it up, that it's Shawn Mendes, and it's a free concert. It's a free concert. It was going to be for all the residents of Muskoka. That has now been moved to Niagara Falls to the enjoyment of the residents of Niagara Falls, which was open with the Niagara Parks Commission, the Mayor Jim D. Daddy, and the entire township with open arms. So that has been reconfirmed. We have Celine Dion, Andrew Bocelli, Michael Bublé, Josh Groban, and many, many, many others planned that are all going to be moved to Niagara Falls. And I want to be on record with that. I want to note that we do have 2,429 that we can accommodate on our site. And I do want to note that in your special events, when I did speak to you, Mayor, I told you that every day we're going to be requiring a permit. If you read your special events and you read your narrative, that includes recreational, social, educational, very vague, and it's not limited to that. So every day the JW Marriott in the summertime is going to require a permit because we have more than 500 people on our grounds outside doing recreational activities on any given day, including larger weddings over 500 inside. So that'll be in the wintertime as well. So we request that we be excused from this, deferred, or more consideration in there. We have not been consulted with this. We have not been advised about this. We found out on our own and have been trying to deal with this. We're building a team. We've hired Odyssey that does all boots and hearts. We've hired traffic management. We've done that. We've done fire evacuation plan, which is an extensive document. We have redone it multiple times. We have readjusted our event multiple times. We have reduced it for consideration, thinking that we would do the Labor Day. We're not going to do Labor Day, as I mentioned. That's going to be moved to Niagara Falls, to a community that appreciates and values what developers do to promote the area. So it's clearly targeted the JW. And clearly I'm taking exception to this because I've been in every single one of these meetings. And it's got nothing but time and money just to build walls and not bridges. So I'm quite tired of that. And further, we have the key that can have 800 people indoors. I'm near my time.
Your 5 minutes are up.
Fine, thank you. The key has 800 indoor, and they don't have a traffic plan. They don't have any parking on site. And as the owner of the Ballard Bay, I'm sick and tired of hiring security to clean up all the defecation and all the drunkens coming across to the key. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. DiCienzo? I'm seeing none. Any comments? Nothing? Okay, thank you very much for your feedback. Next up, we have a presentation from Susan Eplett, who is the president of the Muskoka Lakes Association. Is she joining us electronically? Susan, there we are. Welcome, Susan. You're on mute. And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now, Mayor Kelly?
We can hear you, yes.
Excellent. I apologize. I was listening to the recording and there was a bit of a lag between what I was listening to and what the public was listening to. So I'm sorry for being late. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Susan Epplett, President of the Muskoka Lakes Association, whose office is at 65 Joseph Street in Port Carling, P0B1J0. I'm speaking on behalf of the MLA's 2,000 family members, which represents over 11,500 full-time and seasonal residents in Muskoka. About 70% of our members are residents in the township of Muskoka Lakes. The MLA supports the draft amendment to the special event bylaw to require a special event permit for an outdoor event on private property with more than 500 people. There are many types of special events held in Muskoka, including weddings, outdoor markets, music concerts, and other celebrations and gatherings. But large outdoor events held on private property create a number of risks, and they need to be well organized and planned ahead of time to address these risks. Most concerning is the public safety risk. With the narrow, windy roads in Muskoka, a large event may mean that emergency vehicles aren't able to get through, whether it be an ambulance, fire truck, police car, or even a person trying to get to the hospital for an emergency. So plans need to be in place to ensure that emergency vehicles can get through and to prevent people attending the event from trespassing or damaging neighboring properties. Plans are also needed for sufficient parking, septic capacity, and garbage disposal, as well as to ensure compliance with the township's noise, dark sky lighting, and other bylaws that protect the tranquility and environment that make Muskoka so special. The MLA supports the requirement in the draft amendment that a special event permit will only be issued if the organizers are able to satisfy the township and other relevant authorities that plans are in place to deal with all of their requirements. The other authorities who should be satisfied with the plans include first responders, such as the OPP, Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, and Fire Department. Any economic benefit of bringing visitors to Muskoka for a large outdoor event on private property will be irrelevant if the event is not safe for its guests and disrupts the ability of neighbors and other residents to safely access and enjoy their properties. A large outdoor event will be safer and more enjoyable for everyone if it's in a location that's easy to access from multi-lane roads and highways. Sorry about the noise outside. And if it's close to large centers where emergency and other support services are readily available. For example, permits are regularly issued for large outdoor gatherings at Gull Lake Rotary Park, just off Highway 11 on the outskirts of downtown Gravenhurst. The MLA agrees with staff's recommendation that applications for a special event permit be submitted 90 days in advance of the event, which will give the township and other relevant authorities enough time to review the plans and the organizers time to address any concerns. We also agree with staff's recommendation to shorten this 90 days for people who are planning to hold events in the next few months. It makes sense to us to reduce it for 30 days for events held before July 15th, 2024, and to 60 days for events held from July 15th to August 14th, 2024. There are a few minor housekeeping amendments that the MLA would support to ensure the bylaw is clear and enforceable. For example, the capitalized terms committee and set coordinator are used in the bylaw, so it would be better if definitions were added for them. Finally, if it would help the township in rolling out a special event permit requirement for large outdoor events on private property, the MLA would be happy for you to share our Good Neighbor Code. It sets out some common sense tips, including a reminder that noise carries significantly as it travels over water, to help us be respectful of our neighbors, especially when we have gatherings outdoors. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Epplett. Does anyone have any questions of the speaker? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much for your input. We appreciate it. Okay, take a break. Yeah, let's take a break. It's 10 minutes after 2. Why don't we come back at 20 after? Take a 10-minute break, please. Okay, we're live. Yep. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to the consent agenda, item 8A. I think these are pretty straightforward. I'm going to start with the first one right here. The first one is minutes from the April 9, 2024 council meeting. I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the mayor and council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the May 15, 2024 consent agenda and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Number one is April 9, 2024 special council meeting or minutes, sorry. Number two is April 10. I want to make sure I'm not doing it. Yeah, April 10, 2024 General Finance Committee minutes and action items 1 through 8 and 10 and 11. Number three, April 10, 2024 council minutes. Number four, April 11, 2024 planning committee minutes and action items 1 through 7. Number five, April 22, 2024 CAO interview committee minutes. Number five, April 30, 2024 CAO interview committee minutes. And number seven, May 2, 2024 CAO interview committee minutes. Does anybody have any comments, questions, corrections to the record? I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. And I'm recusing on the next one, so I will step out and let the Councillor Mazan take the chair.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Bosenworth, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the May 15th, 2024 consent agenda and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. 2. April 10th, 2024 General Finance Committee minutes, action item 9. All those in favor? That passes. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you for that. Over here. Next up, item number 9. There was a letter submitted by community members, which is in circulation, I believe, electronically. And I'm just mentioning it for the record. It is available. It can be brought down and reviewed from the agenda, item 9A. I'm sorry. Number 11. We have some reports from senior management. We have, I think, Mr. Sharp joining us. Is he for, or no, Director Pink for 11A?
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Sharp unfortunately fell quite ill this morning, so I am subbing in for his place. You have a report before you. You will recall, obviously, when the Township of Skoka Lakes passes a new official plan, the Planning Act requires that we implement that official plan by way of a zoning bylaw. The council did authorize a request for a proposal. It was in February to retain consulting services to update the zoning bylaw. That closed in April. We did receive 3 proposals. We had an evaluation committee struck to review those proposals. And the findings were such that Meridian Planning Consultants and the Planning Partnership, who teamed up together to submit a proposal, were deemed the most demonstrated that they were best able to meet the criteria in the terms of reference and the RFP. That is the recommendation of the evaluation committee to award the contract to Meridian Planning Consultants and the Planning Partnership. There's also a recommendation. This worked quite well during the official plan review. As councillors do know, there is a month lag when a committee makes a recommendation to council. To help expedite that process, we are suggesting that the planning committee be delegated authority to make final decisions, save for final approval of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. And with that, I stand for questions.
Thank you for that. Anyone with questions for Director Pink? Seeing none, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Councillor Bosenworth, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that the assignment for the completion of the comprehensive zoning bylaw update be awarded to Meridian Planning Consultants, Inc. and the planning partnership in the amount of $124,900 plus HST, and that an agreement satisfactory to the Director of Development Services and Environmental Sustainability and the township solicitor be entered into with the consultant, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any necessary documentation, and that council delegate authority to planning committee for all decision-making related to the comprehensive zoning bylaw update, save and accept for final approval. Councillor Bosenworth.
Thank you. Just a question through you. Is this two companies or one company with a name that has two names in it?
Director Pink.
Thank you, through your worship. It is two companies. Planning Partnership is quite well versed in the engagement, public engagement and consultation portion. So they've teamed up together with the planning expertise and the engagement piece.
Thank you for that. Okay, no other questions. I will call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. That carries. Thank you. Next up, a report from Mr. Moore on the award of contract for Walker's Point Community, sorry, I jumped one, for Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, Council. Today's report highlights the requirement from the province to develop an energy conservation and demand management plan. As Council is aware, we are currently undertaking the development of a climate mitigation plan. And it certainly proposes the question of what is the difference between the two. The climate mitigation plan is a little more broad in its approach and highlights not only buildings, but looking at fleet, agriculture, a range of actions, carbon recapture to lessen the effects of climate change itself. This energy conservation and demand plan focuses specifically on our buildings themselves, and we'll go into a lot more detail as it refers to them. Because we already have a consultant that's working on the climate mitigation plan, and some of the information is certainly already being collected through that process, staff are recommending that we sole source the project to Tatham for the amount of $18,500. Just to speed up the process and reduce overall costs of the development of the plan itself. And with that, staff are available for any questions.
Anyone have any? Thank you for that. Anyone with any questions? I thought you were going to ask yourself. Seeing none, I will read it. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that Council approve the development of an energy conservation and demand management plan, a CDM plan, as per details in staff report PW-2024-29, and that relief from procurement bylaw 2004-161 be granted to sole source the consulting services of Tatham Engineering Ltd. As outlined in report PW-2024-029 to complete the energy conservation and demand management CDM plan, and that $18,500 be drawn from the studies and reviews reserve to create a budget for a new project named Energy Conservation and Demand Management (CDM) plan. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you.
Yes, award of contract. Council's familiar with this. We determined a few months ago to issue a re-tendering for this project. We received 2 compliant bids, and as per the procurement policy, we are recommending award to the lowest compliant bidder, which in this case is Mac Mechanical, for the bid price of $157,848.49. With that, staff are available for any questions.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, and through you to Corey, but I kind of think Mary Ellen may have this. I just wanted to talk about the stove. Did we, I know the community has been very, very concerned that they requested an electric stove, and I was just going by the price and things, and I'm a big shopper, so I'm just saying, I sort of like, what did we get for the 12 grand, you know, kind of thing. So I just wondered, did we stick with the community's request?
Yes, through you, Chair, we've consulted the hall board on the selection of the stove itself, so it is the electric range that they've asked for, so. Yes.
Councillor McIntyre.
And you confirmed that it's ordered, right?
That's correct.
Great, we're good. Oh, through you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else with a question? No? Did I read this? No, I didn't. Or did I? No.
Just read it.
Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved, the council award contract T-2024-35 to MAK Mechanical LTD for the bid price of $157,848.49 plus HST, and that an additional $70,000 be added to project 23152, budget from the Building and Facilities Reserve, and that the Director of Operational Services be authorized to execute the necessary documents or to proceed with the work. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Next up, Mr. Sopko, I believe. Welcome.
Afternoon. So the report before you today is for a joint tender that has been issued with the District of Muskoka. As has been the practice in other years, we've included the township's requirements in the tender for the 2024 service treatment program. 2 compliant bids were received, with Fowler Construction being the lowest compliant bidder on the tender. All of the township projects that were included in this tender can be completed within the available budget and the approved budget. And district staff have recommended the award of this contract to their council, and township staff require the approval of council to execute the documents. That I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Sopko. Does anyone have questions? Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, through you to Tim. I have 2 questions. On the bigger thing, where does Muskoka Lakes fit in with the schedules? So if we're talking about, 6 municipalities all trying to use the same provider, like where do we get a different like, I don't know, is there kind of who gets done what first?
So through you, what I'm hearing is the question of schedule. So in the contract, we don't, the schedule isn't dictated to the contractor. It's up to them to manage it. They usually do try to avoid mobilizing from, one end of the Muskoka district over to the other end and over to a different end. So they kind of take a systematic approach through the township. Typically, we see the work occur, it's pretty regular, that occurs between the months of July and August. It's when it happens. I don't know if that answers the question you're asking.
Councillor Nishikawa, you got to follow up?
Oh, yes. So sort of further to that, though, we have had situations when, for instance, I'll just use Bala as an example, last year, the year before, where there was a lot of concern about the road being redone during the middle of activities and that kind of thing. And I'm not sure that necessarily the contractor even knows of those other things that happen in the community during that short period of time. So it's more about that, but I would also, I'm not quite sure if this includes work that is following up from last year's budget items, for instance. So like if I use East Bay Road, for an example, is that included in the, I mean, it's not listed because I'm sure you didn't mean Torrance Road to be East Bay Road, or but it's kind of that where did the last year's thing? And again, it's property owners are asking, are they doing it this year? And I can go through the budget, but it actually doesn't tell me that clearly.
Okay, so through you, for East Bay Road, the service treatment that was completed last year, there's another contract. It's called the slurry seal application. So we do the surface treatment the first year, and then the year 2 follow-up is a slurry seal application. That is not included in this tender. It will be coming forward to council in a future session.
We're really just talking about a contract to procure the material we need to do the work. Debating how the work's done right now is not what we should be doing, I think. I mean, we're going to have another kick at any work that's going to be done. It's going to come back here.
So,
Or
Mr.
am I
Mayor,
missing
if
something?
I could,
Yeah.
I do need to ask these questions because in fact, people are asking me on a regular basis. And I don't know necessarily where to direct them. If we have something in writing somewhere, I just don't know where to direct them.
Fair enough. That's fair comment.
So through you, if I may add, a suggestion may be that directing them to the website. We typically have details on our capital program there. I know we are working on getting that out now because we need to try to put schedules in as best we can, but the schedules we have to put ranges of seasons and months because we don't dictate to the contractor, you must complete it between this day and this day. It results in higher costs and constraints on the contractor. So that is a resource that I might suggest to everyone to provide that information. So if you have specific questions about the roads, I'm definitely happy to answer that. The report for you is for the surface treatment, which is what happened at East Bay Road last year. So we're going through and awarding that in this report, and our slurry seal, which is what East Bay Road will get this year, that'll be coming forward in a future report to award a contract for that work.
Councillor Zappitz.
Thank you, and through you to Tim. So Tim, what exactly is this for then again? Torrance Road? I don't understand because what I understood was that the slurry seal was definitely going on within the next X amount of weeks to complete that project. So where does this go? From where to where?
Through you. So the award of this contract is from Torrance Road, from West Black Lake Road out to the
Okay.
I guess East Junction of 169, the section that was not completed.
Okay, anyone else with a question? Seeing none, I'll read it. Moved by Councillor Zappitz, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that committee approve the township's participation in the district contract for base reclamation and high float surface treatment in the amount of $1,902,152.92, taxes excluded, and that the Director of Operational Services be authorized to execute all necessary documents to proceed with participation in the contract. Any questions? All in favor? Oops, sorry. Missed you. Okay, that carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sopko. Next up is a report from the Economic Development Officer regarding the special event permit bylaw 2024-046.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. So my report this afternoon regards the proposed update to the special event permit bylaw. As council will recall, at the April meeting of the General Finance Committee, committee endorsed an update of the bylaw, which would extend the requirement for obtaining a special event permit to special events that are taking place on private property with over 500 attendees. Since that time, in response to feedback received from both the committee and the public, staff have proposed the following additional amendments to the bylaw, which are included in my report. The first of which being that we are proposing that events taking place on private property where the total number of attendees is less than the occupancy limits of buildings on said property be exempted from the requirement to obtain a permit.
This amendment is being included both to address concerns about events that might be taking place inside of a building with some incidental outdoor components, people going out on a patio, having part of a conference event outside, those sorts of things. It's also been included to avoid interfering with the regular operations of any of our businesses that regularly hosts conferences, weddings, things like that, because those sorts of events are already handled under the provisions that limit the occupancy of that building. We've added additional language into the offenses and penalties section of the bylaw to be consistent with the township's other regulatory bylaws. And we've also formalized the transitional provisions that were outlined in my report to the April General Finance Committee meeting. So as a result, the 90-day time window will be reduced to a minimum of 30 days for any events that are taking place before July 15th and 60 days for any events that are taking place between July 15th and August 14th of this year. And this is to allow any events that are currently underway to that may be impacted by this to move through the appropriate procedure. An annotated version of the bylaw that fully outlines all of the proposed changes is included in my report for reference, and I would be happy to answer any questions that the council may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Councillor Bosenworth.
Yes, and through you, just for clarification or confirmation, because I'm pretty sure we are in compliance, but have under any provincial legislation, have we given appropriate notice for a modification to a bylaw like this for public comment?
Sir, Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, through the chair, there is no legislative requirement on a regulatory bylaw like this to put out a public notice. That's more or less for the Planning Act and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kent.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Kelly. I had a question that's come from a constituent related to definition 1.16, which the comment is that we list all these different plans that were subject, that the applicant is subject to meeting. And then they add a provision in that says, and any other plans deemed necessary by the township. I was wondering if we could get an explanation from staff about why we added that provision in. It does seem overly burdensome to just have a big wide open and any other plan as a catch-all. And I think that's concerning to some people. So I'd appreciate the background, and then I can ask a follow-up if required.
Mr. Cox.
Through you, your worship. So the reason why that provision was included in the bylaw, that was something we found through our benchmarking of other similar municipal special event bylaws. And the reason for that for that stipulation about any other plans that may be required is that it's not possible for us to fully anticipate or fully enumerate all of the different types and variations of special events that we may see within the township. Certainly we know the major types that we have right now, but ostensibly there could be, for example, some water-based event that comes forward in the future. So that language was put in place to give staff the flexibility to work with event organizers to identify what the particular needs of the specific event that comes forward are, and identify if there's any other safety or other planning considerations that need to be taken into account for those events.
Councillor Kent, did you have a follow-up?
I was just going to say, perhaps we could just say, and any other plans deemed necessary by the township to meet the needs or requirements of an unusual situation or it's so broad. And I do understand the issue, but it was just a suggestion. It might find a way to just broaden it a little. The example I gave to the person who spoke to me about this was, a water-based event. And all of a sudden you got to have water taxis and blah, blah, blah. And I saw that as the exact same example, but it would be a specific kind of a problem that was specific to the applicant that caused them to have more plans than what might be normal. So I was just trying to find a way to limit the language, but just a comment.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Through you, I just wanted to comment. on Sally's comments that this actually fits very well with, for instance, the Cranberry Festival, because every year we get thrown a new something or another that we have to have approval from, whether it's the health unit, whether it's the liquor license board, like there's so many things that just keep coming up. So I think this clearly shows that there are so many other challenges for putting on events and things, and that they're not going to be, they are unique to that particular application. And so I think this kind of nicely covers that area, in my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions or comment? Seeing none, I'm going to read a resolution so that we can bring it back later on in the day, right? Into a bylaw, to approve it as a bylaw. So first, it's moved by Councillor McIntyre, second by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-046, being a bylaw respecting the permitting, regulating, and governing of special events, be presented to council for approval. Any more comment? All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to some zoning bylaws. I think I saw Ms. Crowder come in. Oh, there we are, over there. Are you up next or no? Yes. Thank you. First one is bylaw 2024-051. Nobody's doing a presentation on this one? No. Okay. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-051 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bracket night roll number 2-5-057-01 be read a first and second time. Any comments? I'll call it. All in question, all in favor? Thank you. Oh, yeah. No presentation on the next one. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-051 night roll number 2-5-057-01 be read a third time and finally passed. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Okay, we got a couple here. No presentation yet on these either. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Mayor Kelly. Be it resolved that, sorry. Oh, I can't second it. Okay. We'll change that to Councillor Bosenworth. Okay, moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-050 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bracket 1645 Judd Haven Road bracket 2023 bracket Inc. Roll number 4-16-024 be read a first and second time. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. And then a second one moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-050 bracket 1645 Judd Haven Road bracket 2023 bracket Inc. Roll number 4-16-024 be read a third time and finally passed. All in favor? Thank you very much. That carries. And the next one, we have Ms. Crowder coming up with a report, I believe. Nope, not that one.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly, and good afternoon, members of council. As council may recall, zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0624 in the name of Lily R. Holdings Incorporated was recommended for defeat at Planning Committee on March 14th. At last month's council meeting, a member of council requested that the item be pulled for further discussion and consideration at today's meeting. To refresh council's memory, this application seeks to construct a dwelling and a single-story boathouse which exceed the permitted total lot coverage and lot coverage within 200 feet of the high water mark, and to construct a pergola atop a dock within a water body open space zone. Staff continue to recommend approval of the application, subject to a minor amendment to bylaw 2024-043 to only permit an unroofed and unenclosed pergola. Staff have no further comments, but are happy to assist council with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone with any questions? Anybody? Councilor Roberts.
Yes.
To you, Your Worship, Ms. Crowder, will you remind everyone why staff support this, the criteria that you considered? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Kelly, to Councillor Roberts. Yes, I'd be happy to do so. So I prepared a few key points that I think will drive home sort of the basis of staff's recommendation. So section N3 of the township's official plan states that in considering amendments to the zoning bylaw, council shall consider, among others, cumulative impacts on such matters as the environment, visual aesthetics, and lake character, setback from the lake, terrain, and possible building locations, etc. The boathouse on this property has been designed modestly to lessen the visual impact from the lake. The proposed dwelling is set back over 66 feet from the high water mark and complies with all other zoning provisions. It is not anticipated that the additional coverage, being a total of 354 square feet, of which 211 square feet is beyond 200 feet from the high water mark, will be noticeable given the setbacks and the vegetative conditions on the site. Numerous official plan policies also encourage shorelines to be maintained in a predominantly natural state, with tree cover and ground vegetation extending across the lot's shoreline to a target depth of 50 feet. In this case, the existing vegetative buffer appears to be in a predominantly natural state. The subject property automatically triggers the need for site plan approval due to its size, and through this process, retention of vegetation will be required and plantings considered. Official Plan Policy E4.1J states that the township recognizes that different lakes have different characters, and that the three large lakes, being Rosso, Muskoka, and Joseph, generally exhibit larger built forms and building types which are generally not in character with the smaller lakes. The pergola, which is located directly behind the proposed boathouse, is located entirely within the compliant width envelope of the boathouse, has a lesser visual impact than structures which have walls, and given the existing vegetative buffer, staff are of the opinion that it will not lead to built form dominating over the environment. I hope that that provides a summary, but if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
It's great. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Oh, Councillor Kent, you're next.
Thank you. And through you, I didn't mean to be rude, by the way, with my waving. Just trying to get attention from Toronto. I have a question for staff, which is, do we not have any concerns that this category called pergolas is now going to become part of our precedent building applications? I mean, like, are we going to have people coming forward and say, oh, I'm going to build a pergola, and it's going to create all sorts of downstream problems? It's not something we generally talk about.
Ms. Crowder.
Through you, Mayor Kelly, to Councillor Kent. It's a great question. I think that in this case, staff are not concerned that this application will set a precedent because the pergola, well, the zoning bylaw, the way it's set up, it doesn't strictly prohibit pergolas. It simply doesn't include it as a typical permitted shoreline structure. So what this means is that if anybody were to propose such a structure, they would have to come before this committee and council, and the specifics of the property will need to be looked at. So in this case, the pergola would fully comply with all of the provisions of shoreline structures on the lot. It'll be directly behind the boathouse, which is compliant with all measures of the zoning bylaw. And it's not anticipated to be very visible, if really noticeable at all, given that it doesn't have walls or a roof. So I think that every property is individual and unique, and every application is evaluated on its own merits. And if a similar application were to come forward that met all of these same parameters, I don't really see that staff would have an issue with that.
Thank you.
Can I ask a
Yes,
follow-up?
go ahead, Councillor Kent.
Just a quick one, thank you. The other question I have is when you say an unroofed and unenclosed pergola, doesn't the definition of pergola automatically mean that it's unroofed and unenclosed? Or is there a definition of pergola that actually is distinct from that? So, I mean, I'm just trying to clarify because people are going to come back and have a pergola again. So I thought a pergola was an unroofed and unsided item, but I guess we'd have to look it up.
Ms. Crowder, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Kelly, to Councillor Kent. Yes, I would have the same general understanding as you that a pergola is unroofed and unenclosed, but our zoning bylaw doesn't actually include a definition of a pergola. So I think given the concerns that have been raised about, potentially a roof being put on or walls, just to be on the extra safe side, we've thought, let's put this into the bylaw to stipulate no walls, no roof, and then there's no, potential mishaps down the road.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Kent, go ahead.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
I'm just reiterating my concern for this particular structure, the pergola, and the question that I had asked the first time this came to our committee meeting. And the staff response was that the lot coverage would be over 12%. And that's a big concern for me because we've really tried to not allow those sort of things to happen. And again, the contractor in me can't ignore what's in front of me.
Sorry, you weren't addressing a question, right? It doesn't matter. I'm just curious. Oh, no, comments is fine. I just want to make sure I didn't miss the question. Councillor Roberts, then Councillor Edwards.
To staff through you, Your Worship, is it going to be over 12%?
Through you, Mayor Kelly, and Councillor Roberts, no, because there's no roof permitted on this structure. If they were to illegally put a roof on the structure, then potentially, but a roof is not permitted. So.
Councillor Burry, you have a question?
I do. Thank you. And through you, I'm going to ask our chief bylaw officer for the public record. If mysteriously a roof was to appear on the pergola and it would be then 12% coverage, what are the ramifications of that to the residents?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Burry. The Planning Act is a little bit different than normal regulatory bylaws through the Municipal Act. So if we received a complaint and went to the property, found that there was a roof on it, we would of course send notice to the owner and say, there's a site-specific bylaw. It states X, Y, and Z. You need to bring the property back into compliance, giving them a time frame to complete that. And if not, the only unfortunate thing is only other step is to lay what's called an information and summons, and we would have to bring the property owner into court to answer for that. And hopefully through that process, we would gain compliance.
Director Pink.
Oh. Thank you. And I see Mr. Snyder, I might be stealing his thunder, but I believe if also in addition to Mr. Kennedy's comments, likely building without a permit as well, which could be dealt with under the Ontario Building Code.
Thank you for that. Mr. Snyder, did you have something you wanted to say as well?
Did steal my thunder.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Anybody with any other? Councillor Edwards, I'm sorry, you were up next. I forgot.
I have a couple of questions and a comment. Just looking at the page. This is the boards that are shown on that pergola. What size are they? Would they support a roof?
Ms. Crowder, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Kelly, to Councillor Edwards. Are you referring to the beams that are on top of the pergola structure?
That's right. In other words, like, I'm counting about 9 boards. Are they 1/2 inch by 6 inches? Are they 2 by 6s, or what exactly are they?
To you, Council Edwards, I don't know. I'm not sure what they are, what the size of them are, so I'm not sure I can answer that.
And the second thing, I've never seen a pergola over a boat slip. They're normally used for shade, and that for a family to sit under, to get under the shade. And that, without roofing it, there's no protection for that boat whatsoever. And that's why I did not support it, and I still will not support it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bosenworth, I think you had your hand up.
I did, and thank you. Ms. Crowder has given an excellent overview of why this application should be approved. I think it is a dangerous precedent for us to be challenging the intention of the applicant. If we get into that business, we are in a very dangerous business. And the applicant has vehemently defended their architectural right to have a pergola. Staff has made a very strong case about why we should approve this. And I think we should move on and stop worrying about whether they're going to put a roof on this pergola.
Director Pink.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just also wanted to clarify, just to assist with process. I think we had a lengthy discussion regarding this application at Planning Committee as well. And I think I just want council to be aware and cognizant that it's not a one or other game. There's essentially 2 requests in front of you, one for lot coverage, one for the pergola. There seemed to be general support around Planning Committee for the lot coverage request. The pergola, there seems to be extensive debate. So I just wanted to make that clear, which I think is part of the reason why we've returned the application. So.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so I'm going to introduce one first resolution. Because this was pulled at council last month and a new report came back, there was a quick resolution before we do the bylaw. And this one is moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-06/24 Lily R Holdings Inc. be approved subject to a minor amendment to bylaw 2024-043 to only permit an unroofed and unenclosed pergola. Okay. Any questions? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That's what I just read so far. That's it. Yeah. Thank you. That carries. Thank you. And then, oh, here we are. Thank you. We have 3 more. Be it resolved, moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-043 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, Lily R Holdings Inc., roll number 2-9-051, be read a first and second time. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Next up, moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that Township Council amend bylaw 2024-043 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, Lily R Holdings Inc., roll number 2-9-051. And these amendments are minor in nature and do not require further public circulation and are hereby approved prior to 3rd reading. The amendment shall consist of bullet to permit only an unroofed and unenclosed pergola. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Finally, moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-043 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, Lily R Holdings Inc., roll number 2-9-051, be read a 3rd time and finally passed. Any questions? All in favor? All opposed? All right, that carries. Thank you. Okay. So we're moving on to the section B, general and other planning bylaws. Is there a presentation on? Nope. Okay. This is pretty straightforward. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-056, being a bylaw to appoint a municipal law enforcement officer and property standards officer for the corporation of the Township of Muskoka Lakes, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any questions? All in favor? That carries. Okay. Next one up is the special events amendment. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-046, being a bylaw respecting the permitting, regulating, and governing of special events, to be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Anybody with questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Again, no report. So moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-057, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2021-087, being a bylaw to regulate traffic on township roads in the Township of Muskoka Lakes, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Keep going. Keep on trucking. Okay. Okay. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-047, being a bylaw to provide for rules and regulations for the care and control of all municipal cemeteries in the corporation of the Township of Muskoka Lakes pursuant to the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act 2002, Statutes of Ontario 2002, Chapter 33, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All in favor? Thank you. That carries. Okay, next up, moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa, be it resolved that bylaw 2024-054, being a bylaw to levy and collect taxes for municipal purposes for the year 2024 and to establish due dates for the payments and to charge interest and penalties for non-payment of the same, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments? All in favor? It carries. Thank you. They just keep on coming. Next up. Can I move? Moved by Councillor Zavitz. Seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-053, being a bylaw to deem Lot 35 on Plan M119 in the former Township of Medora, now in the Township of Muskoka Lakes, District Municipality of Muskoka, not to be a lot on a plan of subdivision for the purposes of Section 50 sub 3 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any questions? Councillor Bosenworth.
I beg forgiveness, but could there be a little clarification of what this, or remind me what this was? Perhaps Ms. Director Pink could.
Director Pink, or whoops, we have.
Thank you. Through you, I believe Clerk Proshi might be able to provide further details surrounding the original road allowance closure, but the deeming bylaw will allow the lot to merge with the original road allowance. So right now, the subject property is a lot on a plan of subdivision. The Planning Act does not allow lands to be added to that. So it needs to be deemed to not be a lot on a plan of subdivision. And I think it again relates to an original road closure that.
Thank you for that. As soon as I hear the word subdivision, I get nervous.
Okay, if you heard the word, I obviously read this. Any other questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay, moved by Counselor Edwards, seconded by Counselor Mazan. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-052 being a bylaw to designate site plan control, 1645 Judd Haven Road, part lot 35, concession 13 Medora, parts 1 to 3, plan 35R-22318, roll number 4-16-024 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Questions? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Beauty. Okay, moved by Counselor Zabit, seconded by Counselor Edwards. Be it resolved that council in closed session convene at 3:11 PM for employees, section 239 sub 2B of the Municipal Act 2000, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, section 239 sub 2 sub B of the Municipal Act 2001. One, memo from the CAO Recruitment Committee and presentation. B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, section 239 sub 2 sub B of the Municipal Act 2001. And that's underneath that says number 1, confidential report CCS-2024-12. C, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, section 239 sub 2 sub B, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals, section 239 sub 2 sub E of the Municipal Act 2001. And that refers to confidential report CCS-2024-08. Finally, D, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals, section 239 sub 2 sub E of the Municipal Act 2001. Number 1, confidential report CCS-2024-11. All in favor? Thank you. We're carries, we're enclosed. We just need about till 20 after to get offline and get ready for this. If we can, thank you.